Hi, my name's Laura McCarthy and I'm the Green Spaces Coordinator for Oxford Health NHS Foundation Trust. I work with staff and service users across the trust, but particularly at the Warneford site, to ensure staff and service users have access to and engagement with natural environments. The feedback that we get from past and present service users is that the Warneford site is highly valued in terms of the access to nature for the meadow and for the wider grounds themselves. This is something that is key, and we want to maintain that in the new Warneford Park development. I think the new Warneford Park development presents a fantastic opportunity to enhance the landscaping in line with the local nature recovery strategy. So that can be done through enhancing the planting schemes, through diverse planting, year-round interest, which creates habitat space and food sources for wildlife. So that's something definitely that we'd like to maintain across the site. I think one of the best lines of defence is fighting nature with nature, and I think that presents some great opportunities for mitigating the effects of climate change. So we can do this on site and through design elements for the landscapes. For example, using rain gardens where water's channeled into actually providing water for the planting schemes that we're intending. This can also create additional habitat space. So actually it's a win-win scenario where we can use that water, intercept it and use it for beneficial purposes rather than it just being a problem or draining down onto the meadow or impacting the Lye Valley. I think it seems like such a huge, insurmountable problem, but actually it can be tackled through very small projects like diverse planting, for example, that has more resilience. So where that planting diversity in those plant communities can adapt to those changes and support each other in extremes of weather conditions, it means that those planting schemes are then more resilient. It protects the soil health and it stabilises the ground and reduces water runoff. So there's lots of small wins that we can make that have actually big impacts further down the line. For the biodiversity net gain legislation requirements, we will be retaining as much of the biodiversity on site as possible and adding to that by 10%. So the mature trees are obviously a very key historical aspect to the Warneford site, and particularly on the front drive as you come up towards the old hospital site, there's some fabulous specimens that will be retained.
Okay, so we've had analysed the way the existing hospital drains at the moment. The whole site actually drains via infiltration, so there's a network of soakways located around the hospital site. It benefits from the fact that the underlying geology is a sand, basically a permeable sand. So the proposed drainage strategy will follow the same as the existing. The important aspect is that all of the rainfall falling on the site will be retained within the hospital site. There'll be a network of new drainage systems linking to new soakways so that everything is retained on site and all the runoff is returned to the ground via infiltration. This will therefore protect the surrounding areas, so the existing groundwater hydrology will be maintained and there'll be no flows going off the site. There'll be some improvements as well because the existing system has been sort of evolved over many years. The new system will be designed with enough attenuation storage to deal with the impacts of climate change so that we can hold the flows back. We've also had a careful look because we're very much aware of the Lye Valley site of special scientific interest. We've met with representatives of the Friends of Lye Valley, so we understand that that area is very sensitive in terms of its hydrology and the groundwater flows through it. Now the Warneford Hospital site doesn't have a direct linkage to it, but it is important in that the Lythe Valley is very sensitive to the flow down the boundary brook. Now, as I said, the proposed scheme doesn't require any new connections into the boundary brook and won't change the way the groundwater flows. So therefore we feel that the hospital scheme won't have an impact on it. And the same is true of Warneford Meadow, in that there's a groundwater flow from Warneford Hospital through the meadow to the boundary brook, and that will be maintained by the proposed surface water drainage strategy. And we're working with the landscape architect on the scheme, so there will be some elements of the scheme will be traditional below ground pipes and soakaways, but at the start of that scheme, there's a role for landscape features to be incorporated in it, and elements of the landscaping will become, we call it blue-green infrastructure. So certain planters, swales, and can be linked together so that surface water runoff can be routed through some of the landscape features, which has benefits to taking some of the water out and using it for watering, for example, for maintaining the plants. It also has an impact in terms of pollution removal, and then those will effectively overflow into the drainage system and then onto the soakaways.
My name's Joe Reynolds. I work for Todd Longstaff Gowan Landscape Design, and I'm a landscape architect. Our company specialises in areas of important heritage value, and Todd Longstaff Gowan, the director of the company, is very much an expert in historical landscapes and trained as both an architect and a historical geographer. I feel like we have quite a pivotal role on this project in overseeing the development of the master plan in terms of providing a view on creating a historically sensitive landscape master plan, as well as enhancing biodiversity and also creating a space that's really important landscape asset in terms of its benefit to well-being and also public benefit for those that are now going to be accessing the site. Warneford Park has a rich heritage. It's an extremely important historic building, and it is surrounded by an extremely important historic landscape as well, including a number of really key historic features, including the earthworks, which would have originally provided a viewing platform to patients to see up and over the boundary walls whilst keeping them in a secure environment. And then there's also rich aspirations around those original garden plans about creating a Versailles-like landscape and really an incredible setting for this historic building. Not only that, but the site itself is in a really important place contextually with the surrounding landscape spaces. So quite pivotally, it's positioned south of South Park and north of Warneford Meadow, two, whilst not extremely rich ecological hotspots, but quite important green spaces in their own right in terms of their public benefit. And I think our aspirations for the project are very much to enhance these historic features and protect them. And that ranges not just from the historic earthworks, but including the historic trees and views to the building, and try and recreate and enhance some of those historic views and oblique views that you would have had when you originally arrived at the hospital. But also really provide connections between these sort of disparate elements, these elements that become fragmented. So not just in terms of physical connectivity, which is something we're hoping to reintroduce, but also ecological continuity. So providing a contiguous ecological habitat that spans from South Park to Warneford Meadow. We have aims to very much enhance some of the landscape features that are already there. And this isn't limited to the historic earthworks. It also extends to some of the landscape sort of character areas that we have established on site. So we have areas that are sort of somewhat wooded, but lack any kind of ground story. We have the historic bunds, which have kind of been manicured over the years. They have linear hedges. But we feel that some of these elements could be really enhanced with some more kind of understory planting and native shrub planting to create a richer environment, but also a richer visual environment as well. At the moment, there is a large expanse of amenity grassland, and in fact, the site is probably, one could say, is dominated by amenity grassland. And our intention is to take some of this grassland and introduce a character of Warneford Meadow to it, allowing it to grow and allowing it to enhance over an extended period of time with greater management and greater diversity of planting, perhaps on its periphery. So creating an element of woodland edge, for instance, to this amenity grassland space, creating a kind of picturesque meadow that you would arrive in as you approach the R&D building from the north. A site and project of this scale is extremely complex in terms of its stakeholders and stakeholder engagement. And I think what we've done is work really nicely collaborative within our design team as a first point, but then also sort of broadening our consultation with as many of the statutory and non-statutory stakeholders that we can outside of the site. This includes Warneford Meadow, which is owned by the trust, which is safeguarded by Friends of Warneford Meadow. And we've been in consultation with them to try and identify some areas of mutual benefit for both our site and the meadow itself, looking at where we could potentially provide some enhancement to Warneford Meadow, and link that with our site. There is an ongoing and broad range of consultation that has taken place and needs to take place, and this is something we're really focused on as a design team.